If your brain feels like it has 17 browser tabs open right now and one of them is blasting music, but you can't figure out which one it is, you'll be glad to hear that it's not because you're bad at focus. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. But it might be because you're running on coffee, chaos, and whatever snack is closest to hand. All totally normal when you're an entrepreneur. And if you're at all like me, right? All totally normal. But from a business perspective, when your energy crashes, what can happen is your standards drop. You can make sloppy decisions or start saying yes to crap that you shouldn't or that you wouldn't usually. You may avoid doing the big scary task, which coincidentally may be the very thing that actually moves the needle in your business. You might start convincing yourself that you'll sort it all out tomorrow. Again, none of that is a mindset problem. What it actually is, it's a fuel source problem. Welcome back to the Master Your Business podcast. I'm Deirdre Martin, award-winning business coach and best-selling author, and I help entrepreneurs scale without burning themselves into the ground. And today's conversation is honestly a bit freaking wild because we're talking about the things most entrepreneurs treat as an afterthought until it literally starts wrecking their performance. Food, energy, brain power, and nourishing themselves. My guest today is the amazing Linda Murray, registered nutritional therapist and co-founder of Bioga Nutrition. Linda's got over a decade in clinic experience helping busy humans feel better, not by being perfect or chasing perfection or following any fads, but by fixing what's actually driving symptoms like energy dips or blood sugar swings, mood swings, brain fog, digestive drama, hormonal chaos, the whole kit and caboodle. And I love how she talks and shares this topic because she's not like, you've got to eat like a robot. Linda is very pragmatic. She's a mom, so she knows what it's like in real life, balancing kids, running a business, meeting deadlines, having client meetings, and constantly running out the door. But trying to do all of that and still wanting your brain to work and operate at 100%. So by the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly how to build a simple, balanced plate that supports your energy and your decision making. And you can steal Linda's best strategies for staying fed when your calendar is on fire, including why fiber is about to become your new best friend. You heard it here first, folks. All right, let's get into it because I know someone listening right now is thinking, Deirdre, I'm doing everything. Why am I still wrecked? Well, you're not alone and you're going to love this. Linda, welcome to the Master Your Business podcast.
Thanks for having me, Deirdre. It's nice to be here.
Oh, well, it's great. We were chatting at a recent networking event. We happened to be sitting beside each other and I was thinking, it'll be great to get you on the show and talk about nutrition and how that impacts people in business.
Yeah.
And
I love nutrition. I could talk all day about it. So very easy.
And I love business and I could talk all day about that. So between the two of us now, we'll have great conversations. So in terms of nutrition, I have just finished eating one of my naked bars before we started recording. And I'm like, that's my breakfast, Linda. Don't judge me.
And what should I say, Deirdre? I'm the least judgmental person in the whole world because, do you know what? The nutrition it's so topical, it's so controversial, but actually it's not that complicated. But I think the biggest challenge people have is people are so busy. It's trying to make time for food, whatever your food currently looks like. Chances are it's lack of time or lack of prep is for getting caught. And our food environment, and we're just so busy. And whether you're a business person or a child going to school, we're all been affected by the same problems, or versions of the same problems. So if any nutrition conversation, I say this all the time, isn't to make people feel guilty or feel bad. It's to try and find the one nugget of something you can add to your diet that can help you feel better in whatever you're doing at the moment. And I think that's really important. There should be you shouldn't be feeling chastised by having a bar. I'm guaranteed if you look at my back, there's a bar in case of an emergency, but it's trying to have them as an emergency as opposed to the staple. Well, that's the biggest challenge that we're all facing,
100%. I'm literally out of porridge right now. So I'm like, I'm defaulting to the bars until I get to the supermarket because my husband did the shopping at the weekend and he didn't buy the porridge because he doesn't eat it, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? It's funny actually. I was talking about porridge this morning with the client because we grew up in Ireland. We all assume porridge is the best food in the whole world. It doesn't suit a lot of people. So if it doesn't suit you, don't worry about it. There are other foods. Porridge is not. And other people have that memory of that gruel kind of bowl of porridge. But I have to say, I do love it. But it doesn't suit everybody. So there are other options. It's okay. It doesn't have to be a miserable bowl of porridge for breakfast if you don't have it. But it's just to find something that you enjoy and that you can enjoy and you're not feeling deprived when you're having it. And doesn't
Oh,
take too much time.
seriously, my porridge is so good. Everybody's going to be so hungry after listening to this episode, right? But I have two porridge staples that I make. So one is it, and I make it with oat milk. So it's like porridge with oat milk and frozen raspberries in the microwave. And then when it comes out, I'll like put some high protein granola on top of it. And that's one version. And then another version is porridge with banana and cinnamon and a little bit of granola on top of it as well. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah,
You
very,
can tell
very
me
good.
that's really bad for me if you
No, they're good. My general rule of thumb for every plate, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, is we're aiming for a balanced plate. And the balanced plate will have some carbs. And I mean, I know I don't want to get into food education here now, but having carbohydrate, which your porridge is, with some color, which is what your fruit is, with some protein. And if you can have carbs, some color, fruit, veg, or salad, obviously not salad on your breakfast, but fruit, veg, or salad with your protein and some a source of good fat, you've got a perfect plate. You can't go too far wrong. And then you mix it up within that. So the only place you can get caught is some shop bought granolas. I do have a bee in my bonnet with stuff labeled high protein at the moment. I actually did a really interesting exercise here last week with a client of mine who trained hard, but his blood sugar is currently high. He's almost pre-diabetic and he's trying to lose weight, but we're watching. He doesn't like cooking, he's just on his buzz. And we were looking at some of the foods he was consuming, and they all have high protein on the front, but actually the sugar content was extremely high. And he was driving his blood sugar way up, way higher than it should have been. And he was doing his best to choose based on the front of the food label. So when you're buying packaging that have a food claim on it, or a health halo, as I like to call them, you always have to spin around and look at the back. And like that becomes boring fast. So it makes it tricky to try and, study labels like that. So just be careful when you're buying high protein products that, they may have the protein, but they constantly have a whole lot of other stuff that you don't really need. So if you like granola, occasionally throw some nuts and seeds in with some oats and make your own granola, or even add nuts and seeds to a bag of shop bought granola and try and pick it up that way, because often, even if they say high protein, it's just lots of oats. So you're paying a lot more money for your bag of porridge than you are just for. So that would be my only tip on the high protein granolas. Just watch them because they could be inexpensive and not too much better than a bag of porridge.
Oh, you're so timely with this right now, Linda, because I actually read an article about this recently enough as well. And it literally said the same thing. It said that, watch for the sugar content and the fiber content as well, and I think fiber is going to be coming, like where everybody seems to have been talking about protein over the last while. I think fiber is going to be the next hot topic, but we'll come back and talk about that in a minute, because what I really want to talk about is actually the impact of nutrition on our mental capacity, and how, so many people are listening and you're working fucking hard in your business. Oh, I said I'd try not to swear today. You're working hard in your business. We can wipe out that bit. You're working hard in your business and, you're trying to sleep well and you're trying to exercise and, you're doing all the things and showing up. But, you might still have brain fog, or you might have other things going on, and nutrition really comes in to play with that. Can you talk on that for a bit?
Yeah, I can. There's so much to that. Like, there's so much that you can do. So I never want people to feel, oh my God, I'm not doing it all. I said it before and I'll say it again probably 10 more times. But if there's something I mentioned out that you can add in, don't feel guilty for not doing everything. But there's so much you can do, whether it's from a mood perspective or a kind of cognition and, that brain fog type of piece. Remember, when you're nourishing your body, it's not just muscles and bones and blood. You're also nourishing your mind, and you need to nourish your microbiome. which we'll talk about in a second, but your microbiome has a direct impact on your head is the only reason I'm mentioning it now. So from a nourishment perspective, your brain needs energy. So anytime, if you're feeling tired, your brain may also be feeling tired. So they're all the nutrients that your body needs for energy. So whether it's B vitamins, whether it's magnesium, CoQ10, and we can go through food, and there's loads of supplements on the market. And I would say supplements are amazing, right? But supplements should be in addition to your diet. You can't really out supplement a poor diet. Well, if people don't get the same results if the foundation of their food is not good. But you need to put in the brain supporting nutrients. And there's a list of them. And I can actually set down some stuff to you afterwards that we can put up as specifics. But definitely anything from an energy perspective will also be energy for your brain. There is a specific nutrient actually in eggs, in the egg yolk, and you see people cutting out egg yolks, but it's called choline. And choline is really nourishing for your brain and for cognition, for memory and for brain clarity. And you get it in the yolk of eggs. So you'll see it in a lot of supplements as well. But really important, if there's a woman currently pregnant, they need plenty of choline, even for the baby's brain. It's really important micronutrient. And a great, easy one to add in. But B vitamins are important. CoQ10 is very important. Zinc is important. Magnesium is really important. Vitamin D is important. There's vitamin D receptors on every single cell in your body. I hate listing off nutrients like this because they just sound like a blur. What I would say is when you're eating well for your body, your brain should be getting the benefit as well. And then you go in with the specific deficiencies after that if there's something that you're specifically missing. So if, for example, somebody is experiencing brain fog as a symptom, the question is, number one, are they dehydrated? So hydration is important for every cell in your body, your brain being part of it. Remember, 60% of your brain is water. So if you're dehydrated, your energy is going to be impacted everywhere. It could be a muscle cramp or it could be not a brain cramp, but it could be, kind of, you can feel like that foggy brain because of it. Number two, you need to make sure from a GP perspective, a hormone perspective, that your bloods are clear. See, good girl, great student. You need to make sure that you've been to the GP, got your bloods done recently. I think that's really important for people to just, get your annual checkup and make sure your bloods are clear, that your thyroid is normal, that females are getting the clean bill of health when it comes to hormonal balance and that kind of stuff as well, right? That's important with brain health and cognition. And then it's back to things like choline, things like omega-3s are really important. So your brain, as well as water, there's a huge amount of fat there. So if people have been following a low-fat diet for a long time, I'd see it in clinic where people will be presenting very fat deficient. And I know that's counterintuitive when you look at the diet, but I'm talking about good fatty acids. So I'm talking about, when you're talking about good fats, we're talking about essential fatty acids like omega-3, 6, and 9. And essential means that your body can't make them. Our bodies are really good at cobbling together bits and pieces that we need, right? But if it's an essential nutrient, and some of the proteins are essential as well, but our body can't cobble these together. So we either need to eat them or we need to take them as supplements. The best dietary source of omega-3 is oily fish. Only 5 of them. Think of the acronym SMASH: salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. And we should be taking probably 3 portions of those a week. Now, I won't eat enough of those fish, right? So I do take an omega-3 supplement. And I would say to people, even if you're eating fish and you're presenting, if you've got joint pain or if you've got foggy brain or if you've got females' hormonal imbalances or dry skin, it's worth adding in an omega-3 supplement. It is one supplement that I do think people can benefit from. And add it in for a month and see how you feel after a month. After a month, if you're not feeling any better, then maybe it's not the problem. You shouldn't need to take something forever. But it would be worth adding it in and see if you feel a bit of a difference. But sometimes it's back to basics. From a brain health, from a concentration, cognition, sometimes it's eating regular meals, eating a balanced plate, as I mentioned, getting good sleep, getting your hydration, getting your stress management, getting all those things in place, and just doing those foundational pieces right. And if you get them right, then it's easy to kind of pick out the 1 or 2 nutrients you can add in on top of that if you need them. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally. And it's really clear how you've broken it down, and I'll never forget SMASH acronym now after that. Thanks for sharing that one. The other thing that I think crops up a lot too is that when people are so busy, like, and we know they are, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. Sometimes I don't stop for lunch and I eat breakfast late. But I think, some of the things that I see happening then is if I go too long in the day, I find I'm not able to make decisions as quickly. And I literally have a sign in my kitchen that says, like, hangry is actually a thing. And I'd love for you just to talk on what can busy entrepreneurs do to help with avoiding those types of situations. Like, help me here, Linda.
Yeah. No, and it's a common problem, Deirdre. I mean, I say to an awful lot of people, a lot of my clients already have a really good diet. It's just these kind of strategies or structures is where they're getting caught. So when I say the really good diet, it's an inconsistent diet. So I think the first thing is, and I know this is really boring and I hate saying it out loud, but it really is a game changer, is to try and make a bit of a plan. So if you currently are not eating at lunchtime and you know you're getting that blood sugar dip in the afternoon, it's to make a plan for what can you do earlier in the day. Now, if you want, it can be something like a smoothie pre-made the night before in the fridge, ready to go. That can be something. It can be something small, like a couple of rice cakes with peanut butter and a banana on top of it. So you've got your fat, your carb, and your color. No protein in it. It can be adding collagen into your coffee so you're getting adapted protein in that. So it's adding some small steps into a routine and trying to make one change at a time. Like if you try and change it all this week, it'll be great for a couple of days. Something will go wrong and it'll go belly up. And then you're disgusted with yourself and it's like, oh, it didn't work. But, as you say, we already have busy routines. So to try and add in something like that, one of the challenges you have is our bodies need that stability and that routine, right? So if we don't eat all day, which it happens with a huge amount of women, you get to nighttime and then you start eating and then you catch up on yourself. So our digestive system are strongest in the morning, whether we like it or not. And I know a lot of people really like not having a breakfast and doing a long fast, but actually biochemically or chemically or biologically, whatever way it is, per circadian rhythm, our digestive system is strongest in the morning. So that breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, dinner like a pauper, that's actually linked to our circadian rhythm, right? So if you don't have breakfast, you have a small lunch or you skip lunch, you get to evening time and you're having your full day food because you're trying to catch up on yourself. Your digestive system is going to be more sluggish. So you're not going to absorb your nutrients as efficiently. Of course, it'll do its job, but it'll also impact the quality of your sleep. You may not sleep as well. And I get a lot of people who get a lot of reflux and that, GI pain, and they're taking Gaviscon and stuff going to bed at night. And just that simple act of not eating at nighttime and eating kind of finish your dinner at, maybe 7, 8 o'clock, then go to bed after giving yourself that break before you go to bed, that can make a huge difference. And you see, if you're also eating late, then you're not hungry in the morning. So it's kind of a catch-22. And it's our society. Everybody's doing the same thing, Jared. It's not a unique situation, but it becomes, we're just too busy during the day. We do all our eating in the evening. And what tends to happen then earlier in the day is you're grabbing coffee or you're grabbing a biscuit. You don't have an appetite for a breakfast. Then you've grazed on something and then you don't have an appetite for your lunch. Then you're grazing on something. And by the time you get to dinner time, you've had no nourishment. And you can't have the energy. You can't have the good fats. So when we're grazing on, I've no problem with people having biscuits or treats, but probably there's no good fats in it. There's probably no protein. There's probably no fibers. There's probably no micronutrients in it. So all those fuels, there's no choline, for example, in a biscuit. So choline, when I was talking about, which is really good from an egg yolk, if you have 2 scrambled eggs on a slice of toast, you've nourished your brain before you get going. If you're not having breakfast and you're having a cup of tea and a biscuit or a scone, scones are my arch nemesis because so many women in particular skip breakfast, have a scone, they're full for the day, but there's very little nourishment in them. And then, you get to evening time, but you're not nourishing your brain, so you can't have the energy. It's also because you're not eating probably enough food that your energy levels are, they're spiking up and then they're crashing down. And all of that, I mean, when I'm talking about blood sugar imbalance, it impacts your energy, it impacts your mood, it impacts your weight management. So if somebody's trying to lose weight and their energy is bouncing during the day, the hormones in their body are connected to that. And it's going to affect how you're feeling, and then how your body is putting away calories during the day or energy during the day. And that's where you get a little addition to your padded areas versus having the energy that your body needs to stay going. Do you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
important to kind of, but how do you do it? You have to start with a plan. Just start with, make a list of 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 different breakfasts that you like for different situations, whether it's a working from home day, whether it's a traveling day, whether it's a going to school day. You have a list of stuff so that you're not getting up in the morning going, oh, what will I do? You've kind of got a plan there the night before.
I think that's so smart because I think what tends to happen as well is, and I've recorded an episode about this, is that our brains are so fatigued with all of the decisions that we have to make as an entrepreneur that sometimes we just go for that naked bar rather than think through what will I have for breakfast this morning, right?
But
But
there are enough decisions to make in the morning
yeah,
than
exactly.
trying to make that decision then. I mean,
Yeah.
I will have toast when I'm running out the door if I've nothing thought about. Today I was really organized and I had baked oats. But if I hadn't got that prepared and kind of in the fridge ready to go into the oven this morning, and it's 2 minutes, it's not an effort to do it. I just had to get my brain to engage to actually have that in the fridge so that when I got up this morning, I can get the kids stuff ready. I
Hmm.
just, if I'm not thinking about myself, and we are always last on our list, unfortunately.
Totally. And what I used to do, and this definitely helps, is that like usually I'm the one who does the grocery shopping in the house, right? And what I usually will do is I will put out a shopping list on Alexa. So everybody in the house has access to Alexa. But I will go through like recipes online to decide what am I going to cook all
Yeah.
week. And then the ingredients that are needed go on Alexa. But then I
Yeah.
save those recipes. So if I'm not the person who's cooking the dinner, that somebody else goes, oh, there's chicken in the fridge. What's this for? And they just check what is the recipe for the week so they know what the dinner is. And
Great
that just
idea.
makes it so handy
Yeah.
because A, it helps with the shopping and we know and nothing gets wasted.
Yeah.
And B, it's like, I don't always have to cook because somebody else knows what to use, right? So it's
Yeah.
super helpful. But
Yeah.
the third thing is then it takes away from that decision making process around what will we actually have for
Yeah.
food. Now, I do have to sit down and plan that, and I'm not always good at doing it. But when I do it, it definitely helps. And it saves financially as well. And I think that works. So that's a habit I need to get back into.
The
But
only thing I'll say to is people kind of think, oh, I must have the perfect plan and I must have a different plan next week. And like, you don't. Make your plan for this week. And every single time you put effort into, whether it's cooking or chopping that's the cleaning up always gets me. But I think vegetables are always the biggest problem. So if I'm peeling carrots, I peel half the bag or nearly all the bag of carrots. And then they get used because the kids will grab them for a snack or I chop them into something. For his wife to go into the fridge and start chopping up carrots or peeling carrots or chopping up cabbage, it's not happening. So having prepped that stuff in advance, or even having some potatoes prepped and in the fridge ready to, I tend to not peel my potatoes. Even if I'm making chips, it takes 2 minutes to chop them up. But if you do want to peel them and they're peeled in the fridge, it's as quick to chop them as it is to go to the freezer and get frozen chips to throw in. And then, or you can bake them or roast them or put them, cook them and mash them. But when you have them semi-prepped, it's not everything cooked to the weekend, but if they're semi-prepped, it makes making dinner much more of an assembly job than starting from scratch with all the effort that goes into it. Because, we've plenty going on. We don't need to be spending half an hour or an hour every night trying to get dinner on the table either for people. But,
yeah.
reuse your plan. Was the
Mm.
point of that story. Sorry.
Yeah, I have
Completely off
same
track.
recipe favorites because as well, it's like it's what's everybody going to eat, and it's trying to find those things that everybody will eat, and so people are getting the nourishment that they need, and there's no food going in the bin; it's
Yeah.
wasted because that's
Yeah.
frustrating as well when you go to the
Yeah.
effort of cooking and
I
then
don't like the cost. 1/3 of, I was looking at statistics the other day and they were saying the third highest expense is food waste.
Mhm.
Even from an environmental perspective, buying food and throwing out bits and pieces adds up to so much over the course of a week. So if you're trying to save money, try and plan a little bit smartly.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Okay, I want to go back on the conversation to where we were talking a bit about the protein and fiber stuff. So let's
Yeah.
start with protein because, like, there's definitely trends out there right now. Like, we're seeing, like, in the supermarket, there's aisles with protein. Like, even Aldi and here in Ireland have it, and we've listeners in the US and stuff too. But you guys don't have Aldi over there, as far as I know, but we have aisles. It's like, I don't want to call it like a bargain supermarket, but it's a German supermarket. So just think it's highly efficient, right? That's what it is. And we have a couple of chains like that. And they have these now protein sections as well, because it just seems to be a trend. But, it's interesting because I had this conversation with my sister recently. She's trying to increase her protein intake, but and in doing that, she's like putting more protein on her plate for every meal, but actually she's piling on the weight instead of losing weight like she thought she was going to. And I'm curious like about that. And you talked about the sugar, which is great because I was going to ask you about that. So I'm curious about the protein and does that impact weight? And then how much protein should you actually be taking?
Yeah.
If you're not
Yeah.
like
So protein
physical,
is
physical.
really important because we need it for growth and repair. Now I'm going to be on the growing phase. I'm at the repair phase, right? But you need it in every cell in your body and your immune system needs it and we need it as we age it. And your question about how much do we need is a really good question. Let me come back to that. The other thing with protein is protein keeps you fuller for longer. So one of the huge benefits I would find is if somebody's constantly hungry or if you've got kids who are constantly hungry, if they're having a meal that's all carbohydrate and, if for example, if a kid is having toast with jam for breakfast, it's carbohydrate with carbohydrate. If they change that to toast with an egg, they should stay fuller for longer, by having that, as well as getting the variety of nutrients in it. So protein is great. It's really important for growth, repair, and satiety, or keeping you fuller for longer. Really important. However, how much do we need depends on your age, your sex, and what your goals are. So as a teenage athlete trying to, build muscle, trying to get bigger, trying to get stronger, may need to have more protein than woman in their 20s who is happy with the weight she's at. Now, the amount of exercise and everything you're doing is going to have an impact. But the range in Ireland always was anywhere from, I don't want to start getting into these numbers, but they were zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, of your ideal body weight. And they've now gone up to anywhere up to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So for a woman who's somewhere around 70 kilos, that can be somewhere around 100 grams of protein a day. Now, let me put that into context. If you're having meat or fish, like a large chicken fillet or a fillet of salmon may have somewhere around 50 grams of protein. So if you're having meat or fish with your meal, chances are you're getting enough protein. If you're a vegetarian and you're not having meat, plant proteins, there's loads of protein in non-meat sources. It's absolutely possible to do, but there's not as much per gram. You need to eat a lot more of it. So it can be a little bit trickier that way. And that's where people start, especially if you're aiming for the higher numbers, it can be difficult. And breakfast is the meal where people tend to not typically, Mr. Kellogg's has told us that a bowl of cereal or we have a slightly toast, we tend to not always necessarily grab. We'd start with our carbs and we'd add from there. So you were talking about porridge this morning, or we're talking about toast, you're talking about cereal. Versus when you're dinner, you're talking about, well, I'll have chicken or I'll have fish or I'll have beans. We tend to start with the protein at meal at dinner time, but for breakfast, we do tend to start with the carb. So breakfast can be trickier. And technically, the time of the day doesn't matter when it comes to our total protein goals because our body utilizes the protein when we sleep at night. Now, I can stand corrected on that. For women, it does seem to be a bit more important when it comes to if we're building or maintaining muscle or exercising. But you could get very bogged down in details there if you want. But let's pretend that the time of the day doesn't really matter if you got enough. But it's very hard to eat enough in one meal. So if somebody's not having breakfast and they're having crackers for their lunch, it's very hard to eat 100 grams of protein in the evening. So that's why to try and add it over the day is important. And the other thing about spreading it over the meal is that satiety piece, that hunger piece during the day. So you don't want to be feeling hungry all day. And then if you're hungry, your sugar cravings go through the roof. So the amount of protein we need depends really. I kind of tend to start with 100 grams for people. Things like eggs can have about 6 grams of protein. So if you're into protein and you're into figuring it out, it is worth monitoring for maybe a week and see what your typical meals have in terms of protein. Like the likes of my fitness pal will give you loads of information and stuff like that. I don't like monitoring food. I think the head melts, to be honest. But it is interesting for a lot of people when they do it, even for a week, they will see gaps in their diet often if we're just trying to get back to basics. So I do think it's worth kind of understanding what's in it. Now, what people fail to remember is like milk will have protein in it. So if you're putting milk into your coffee, somebody's having a latte, they could be having 9 grams of protein in their coffee. Dairy-free milks don't have as much protein. So any vegetarians or vegans do really need to watch. They can be lacking quite quickly. What else about protein? Yeah, even things like bread, like a bagel, gluten is the protein in those cereals. So it's not strictly carbs versus protein. You know, you will get proteins in some of your carb food. So have a look at what you're eating. And if you're not if your goal is to increase muscle or maintain muscle while you're exercising and you're not correctly doing that, it's definitely worth looking at your protein intake correctly to see where you're at and you need to make adjustments.
That
But
makes
definitely
total sense.
having kind of a gram per your kilogram of your body weight is a fairly good indication. So anywhere between 80 and 100 grams for most women is a decent number.
Yeah.
Roughly, that's kind of what you're
Yeah.
looking at.
I think where she was going wrong with this, and like we've had good conversations around it, and I was like, I think you should, like, and she did actually go and see maybe a dietitian or a nutritionist, I'm not sure which, but she did actually go and see somebody about it. And what they told her was it was however many grams per kilogram, but they didn't say for her ideal weight. And so I was like, but that doesn't make sense. If your weight is going up to eat more protein for, the more weight. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. It should be, I'm guessing, the other way around. Eat less
The
protein and your
other
weight
thing
comes
with
down.
protein is protein should help you feel fuller for longer. But no, I don't know your sister and I don't want to make assumptions. But sometimes if we don't kind of recognize when we're full, we can tend to overeat regardless. And I'm not into calories. I don't think calories in versus calories out is a conversation to be had
I
for
agree.
most women. And often when it comes to weight gain, a lot of women, we have to look at hormones and not just calories in versus calories out. Even if it's protein, we can be just eating too much. Like if she's eating enough protein but not enough fruit and vegetables, maybe she's not getting enough fiber, and maybe that's the area that you could look at, you know.
And something else, Linda, with this that came up, and it's interesting because we both have these smart scales, and the smart scale supposedly measures your protein levels. And I'm like, I've been monitoring my own protein levels in terms of, oh, yeah, so for breakfast, I'm conscious that, oh, I need to add the granola. So there's nuts and stuff in it, and it
Yeah.
is the high protein version. And then I'm like at lunchtime, increasing the protein as well and making sure that there's plenty. And I'm monitoring it over a period, intentionally increasing protein and not seeing the scales thing move. So either A, the scales is broken, or there's something digestively going on that's prompting me not to increase it. What might be going on
So
there?
if you're increasing, my scales is a body composition. So I would always, especially when somebody's trying to lose weight or like anybody on these weight loss medications, of course, currently running to educate people on weight loss medications on muscle mass and maintaining muscle mass. You need to be working your muscle to maintain muscle mass, regardless of consuming protein. So the protein doesn't make your muscles stronger. You need to work the muscle for your body to utilize the protein you've consumed. And that's how your muscle mass gets maintained, not just so yes, you need to eat it, but yet you also need to work it. And a lot of women, walking is great. It's my favorite exercise and I tell everybody to do it. But actually, if you don't use it, you lose it. When it comes to muscle mass, especially for women, trying to maintain muscle, we need to be, probably doing some kind of strength and conditioning training. Even Pilates, when it's amazing, sometimes we just need to progress a little bit further. And that's what I'd be suggesting that she does, as have a look at that to see why is that not increasing? Now, I don't know whether you're doing strength and conditioning training at the moment, but I work with a lot of women who are very fit, but it's just not progressing. And if it's not progressing, you're not increasing and it's hard to maintain it all. Like, so it might explain it a little bit rather than kind of
Yeah. Have you not seen me doing my weights on social media?
Trying to stay off social media. That desperate. I'm trying to post it and get it off it myself. Desperate. I'm terrible. So I
No, that's
apologize. I
great.
haven't seen all your weights on social media.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's hard to do it all.
It's hard to do it all. Yeah, it is hard to do it all. And it like, sleeping right and eating right and
Yeah.
exercising right
Yeah.
and then having mindfulness time and all of the things like
Yeah.
and,
Your
and
head's
then
been
being
about to
social.
explode.
Yeah, and like it's time consuming too,
Yeah.
but I think if you don't invest in you, it's like, and this is how I see it. It's like how you feel in the next 72 hours. 72 hours from right now, how I nourish my body with sleeping, eating, exercising, and mindfulness. In 72 hours, I'm going to reap the rewards and
Yeah.
benefits of that. It's not just like right here, right now. If I'm feeling
No,
crappy
no, it's
today,
never instant. It's
yeah.
never instant. And it's hard for people to make that association. And I mean, I suppose the good thing is, when we're talking about it's never instant, one bad meal is never going to be a problem either, Deirdre, or a treat or croissant, whatever people are thinking is a bad food. That's never the problem. But if you're continuously not nourishing yourself, I mean, you've got worse, you've got animals. You'd never not fuel your animal effectively and efficiently. A farmer will never abandon his animals and not feed them properly because even if they're a dairy farmer, their cows can't give them their yield. If they're not nourished, they can't do that. But we expect ourselves to run on empty. Our body can't make energy if you don't put the nourishment in there. And to make energy, ATP, that molecule of energy, you need B vitamins, you need magnesium, you need CoQ10, you need all of those, and you need them every day. So being really good for one day and not really good the next day is not good enough, And it's like that. Having one bad meal is never a problem either. It's the big picture, but you have to put in the nourishment for your body to have the energy longer term.
I love this conversation and for so many reasons, but that makes so much sense. And Linda, before we finish up, I want to just ask you about the fiber piece because I think, yeah, protein is what we're
New
seeing
kid
in
on
all
the
the
block.
shelves right now, but I think we're heading into a fiber
Yeah.
trend next. What are your thoughts on the fiber piece?
Fiber is actually it's everything. So I mentioned the microbiome earlier, and the microbiome, like 10 years ago, we didn't know these labs existed, right? But there's a huge amount of research after happening in the APC Microbiome Institute in Cork, in the last number of years. And the microbiome is a collection of microbes, or I know we just refer to them as bacteria in your large intestine. And we don't know what a perfect GI microbiome looks like, but we know we want it diverse and we want it abundant. We want lots of variety and we want lots of the good lads. And sometimes there might be a bad lad in there and people might, we might need to deal with that. But actually often the levels of good lads are low. When that happens, or if we get an imbalance, we call it dysbiosis. Dysbiosis can contribute to digestive issues, that can be constipation or diarrhea, bloating, it can cause skin issues, it can cause low mood. Your gut and brain are directly connected. And we know that bacteria in your large intestine have a direct impact on people's mood. Direct impact. It's not even around the house, it's directly having an impact. We know it's impacted. It has a link to weight gain. Everything, every system in your body is going to be impacted to your microbiome. Where fiber comes into it, it's fuel for your microbiome. So we feed, people talk about probiotics, and I love probiotics. I had a post up the other day on them. We don't need to be taking them all the time. They're very specific. There's a specific strain that will do a specific job. And if you're taking the wrong strain, it won't do you any harm, but it certainly won't do you it won't be doing what you're expecting it to do. Even if it's a really good one, if there's not evidence to suggest that it's going to do what you want it to do, it's not going to work. But probiotics are a temporary solution and help to make the environment hospitable for good bacteria. But for us to maintain a long-term healthy microbiome, we need to give it fiber and we need to give it colour. We get our fiber and our colour from our plants. And the more variety, the better. So there's a magic number that's after coming out of research in the UK in the last number of years, and it's 30 plants a week. I know people are panicking when they hear that, right? But I know plants include all fruit, all vegetables, all nuts and all seeds, beans, lentils, chickpeas, whole grains, and fresh herbs. You're getting different benefits from every one of those. So if you have an apple today and an orange tomorrow, a kiwi the next, obviously you're not buying food and throwing out half it, right? But if you're getting variety across your week or your month, that's going to be beneficial to the microbiome. So the different fibers and the different colors are coming into their own. And like the one thing I'd say about fibers really important. If you have IBS currently, you may struggle to consume those foods. But there's a lot we could do. I mean, that's the work I do all the time. I help people to alleviate that problem and reintroduce those foods. So if you find you're not able to tolerate loads of food, that's something we can help with. But trying to get a variety of fiber into your diet will help in all those areas. If you've got a child with skin issues that they're worried about acne, I'd be looking at the microbiome. If you've somebody who's picking up every cough, cold, and flu going around the place, I'd be looking at the microbiome. If you're looking at menopausal hormone balance, I'd be looking at the microbiome. So it is important for everything. So yes, I'm a big fiber fan.
Oh, I can tell. I'm like, so see, protein out the window, fiber in. Yeah.
But you see, the beauty is when people talk about superfoods, if you're talking about something like beans, okay, beans are controversial, like some people are just terrified to eat them. But beans will give you fiber and protein. So it doesn't need to be, you're getting protein from a lot of these good fiber foods as well. So it doesn't have to be either or. It's trying to combine them in. Your nuts and seeds will give you good fats, some fiber and some protein. Versus cornflakes that will give you carbohydrate and whatever added vitamins that are got into it, but it's not giving you any fiber, fat, or protein. But you're getting nourishment from all of those real foods. So
brilliant. Great advice there, folks. Linda, anything else you want to share for entrepreneurs who are listening around the nutrition piece for them?
yeah, start small. I think most people I work with have a good understanding of what they should be doing, and then they beat themselves up when they're not doing it. So start at, you mentioned your lunches where you skip out. I'd be putting a plan in place for you for a lunch, whether it's a minestrone soup made and in the fridge or a baked potato in the air fryer, or, make a list of things for the days that work for you and get that one meal sorted. And when that's sorted, move on to the next thing. Then you can't do it all at the one time. There's no such thing as perfect diet, so don't expect that of yourself. Just make one change at a time.
Great advice. Easy, simple, doable. Love it. Okay. Linda, where can people find you if they want to reach out and book an appointment with you? And tell us a little bit around the services that you provide so that they know what they'll be reaching out for.
Yeah, so I do a lot of one-to-one clinics. So basically working with somebody who will fill out a questionnaire with a specific health goal, or just try and, get a better handle on what they're currently doing. We'll work one-to-one ideally a package. I do one-off consultations, but ideally in a 3-month package with people. So that's either online or in person, and my website is bionutrition.ie. And after that, I've currently got a course ongoing. So how to eat well when you're taking weight loss drugs, but that's coming to an end now this month. So that may be running again in the future. But just like that, trying to get the basics back in place for people and to understand the pitfall of not eating well, especially when you're losing weight like that. And after that, then it's talk, corporate work, workshops, functional testing. So loads of information on my website about the different services I offer. But I suppose the bulk of it at the moment is one-to-ones with people and functional testing to understand what's going on with them at the moment. That's great.
Fantastic. So, folks, I will link Linda's website. So if you want to reach out and connect with her, you can catch all of her details in the show note. And I'll be sure to grab the details that you've mentioned, Linda, earlier as well. That list of nutrients and vitamins that you talked about, we can upload that as well to the show notes too. So, Linda, it's been a pleasure. Very educational, informative, and practical. Thank you so much for being with us.
And thanks for having me, Deirdre.
Oh, that was so interesting. And folks, if you take nothing else from today, take these 3 truth bombs. First, your brain is part of your body, so stop feeding it like it's optional. When you're underfueled, your focus tanks, your mood might get a little bit spicy. And your decisions may become questionable. So make sure your brain is well fueled. Second, healthy labels are not a strategy, and sometimes they're there to kind of trick us a little bit. So flip the box. And if it screams high protein on the front or high fiber, whatever it is, make sure you go and check the back as well. Number 3 is fiber isn't a trend. It might be the new one that's coming though, so you kind of heard it here first. but it's fuel for your microbiome, and your microbiome runs more of your life than you think. Your energy, your mood, your digestion, cravings, it's all connected. Now, here's the one move I want you to do today, not tomorrow. Today, I want you to pick one meal you usually skip or scramble and make it an easy default, a repeatable breakfast, a backup lunch, something that you don't have to negotiate with your brain. That's just really simple to be able to produce and create and nourish yourself, because this is where most people screw it up. They try to change everything or introduce too many habits. I'm going to start Monday, and then by Thursday, the whole thing has gone to pot. And then you just decide it doesn't work. That's so totally normal. But nope, you don't need to do that. Make one tiny change and then the next, once it's consistent and repeatable. If you want to connect with Linda or explore working with her, I've dropped all of her links in the show notes. Go say hi. And if you want to stack this episode with the business side of the problem, in terms of decision making, go and listen to 3 ways to reduce founder decision fatigue. Because when your brain is tired, everything feels heavier than it needs to be. All right, my friend, if today's episode helped, do me a solid and go and share it with one entrepreneur you might feel is maybe running a little bit on fumes. I'm calling it ambition. Your secret is safe with me. And don't forget to follow the show. Leave a quick review. It really helps more than you think. Until next time, keep mastering your business.